There are 1,000,001 amazing moments in the Halo series I could spend all day chattering away about, and with that being the case, I thought it might be fun to try and whittle that list down to just my very favourites, which I present to you here, until I later inevitably change my mind at least. Picking a favourite is a tough task too, so I've decided to present them in release order, rather than spend too much time huffing and puffing as I struggle to decide which I prefer. The Silent Cartographer's beach battle is to this day one of the franchise's most thrilling set pieces.
The Covenant believe that what they call the Silent Cartographer is somewhere under this island. The Cartographer is a map room that will lead us to Halo's control center. The island has multiple structures and installations. One of them contains the map room.
Up until you reach this point in Halo Combat Evolved's campaign, you've mostly been on the back foot, fleeing the Pillar of Autumn, rescuing Marines, or sneaking onto Covenant ships. But here, for a few glorious moments, you are given the opportunity to take the fight to your enemy. Halo's theme swells, Foehammer bellows into your radio, Chief's fellow soldiers charge forward alongside him, and you engage in what was, back in 2001, a marvel in terms of both technology and design. The sheer size of the encounter was leaps and bounds beyond anything else seen on consoles at the time, and it had fantastic level design to match its absurd scale too, with environment and enemy placement used to keep the action marvellously intense right up until the beach was completely clear. In my view, it's the first time in the series you truly understand what it is to be a Spartan, an unstoppable force of nature capable of facing any enemy head on without any fear whatsoever. The rest of the mission is also superb, but its opening skirmish on the sands I always think of first whenever the Silent Cartographer's name is mentioned. It is Halo at its exhilarating best. You'll likely have an inkling there is something very wrong with Installation 04's weapon cache in the swamp long before you find Wallace Jenkins' helmet cam recording, but that doesn't make the subsequent reveal of the Flood during 343 Guilty Spark any less terrifying.
Sergeant, we're surrounded. God damn it, Jenkins! Fire your weapon!
There are too many, Sarge!
Don't even think about it, Marine.
Oh, this is local!
Back here, Marine. That's an order. Jenkins!
Then, once the cinematic concludes, you quickly realise you are in exactly the same area Captain Keyes and his group were in when they were ambushed. The Flood soon begin their relentless assault, and once you finally manage to escape the room, you are greeted by a facility which has descended into complete and utter chaos. Bungie's handling of the build-up to the Flood's grand entrance is immaculate, with a steady stream of unsettling clues fed to you. Think the Flood in the background in the swamp, the dead Covenant you discover, or the crazed Marine you meet, for example. And the jarring shift in tone from action to horror means the impact of the blood-curdling twist is felt all the more acutely as a result. Moments prior, you'd been blasting Covenants to bits with a tank, and then suddenly you're facing zombies, sort of. So many people who watch my videos have shared with me how traumatised they were by the Flood's abrupt emergence, and frankly, I'm not at all surprised. Halo Combat Evolved starts out as a joyous military sci-fi romp before it takes a sharp left turn and becomes something far more sinister and brilliant. Halo 2's opening level Cairo station is a very solid, if not particularly breathtaking affair, but an argument could definitely be made for its closing cutscene being Master Chief's most iconic moment.
Cairo, this is an Emberclad. The carrier shield is down. I'm in position and ready for immediate assault.
Negative, Commander. Not against a ship that size. Not on your own.
Sir, permission to leave the station.
For what purpose, Master Chief?
To give the Covenant back their bomb.
Everything about this cinematic is flawless. The track Last Spartan, that's playing in the background right now, is my most listened to song in the entire series and is the perfect accompaniment to the action on screen, slowing its tempo at just the right moment as Master Chief delivers his deadly cargo and escapes in the nick of time as a Covenant ship explodes above him. I know this isn't the most imaginative description of dialogue you'll have ever heard, but the chatter between Chief, Cortana and Lord Hood is also incredibly cool, setting up the ensuing scene clean wonderfully. In many ways, Cairo Station is a pseudo-sequel to Combat Evolved's first mission, Pillar of Autumn, except where the original ended with Master Chief crash landing on Installation 04, this second time everyone's favourite Spartan takes the initiative and launches himself into space, taking the fight to his enemy. It was as clear a demonstration as any that when it came to Halo 2, Bungie well and truly meant business. Captain Keyes' fate towards the end of Halo Combat Evolved gave us all a fairly clear indication that the Flood were capable of greater horrors than simply creating infection, combat and carrier forms, but I'd guess there were few who realised just how horrendous things could get.
What is that?
I am a monument to all your sins.
The first appearance of the abominable Gravemind at the beginning of his self-titled level was a huge shock. You'd perhaps become used to the Flood being an entity lacking any real personality beyond their mantra of consume everything, and then all of a sudden there was one sat directly in front of you with significantly more to say. Voiced with aplomb by D. Bradley Baker and sometimes speaking in iambic heptameter, essentially lines of 14 syllables most often used in poetry, he immediately makes his presence felt as he speaks to Master Chief and the Arbiter, even going so far as to mock the latter's faith. I spoke earlier of the dialogue at the end of Cairo Station being cool, but this cinematic is one of those which highlights just how impressive a lot of Halo's writing is to boot. The Gravemind succinctly highlights the differences between Chief and the Arbiter, and these scenes mark the halfway point of sorts in their ever-shifting relationship. At the start of Halo 2, their outlooks couldn't be more different, with Chief being celebrated while the Arbiter is punished. Here, the Gravemind uses a common cause to unite them, and by the end of the campaign, they have become genuine allies. It's all quite poetic. I know it was pretty exciting back in 2004, but I'd like to think we can all agree that taking down the Scarab at the end of Metropolis in Halo 2 is a set piece which hasn't aged altogether brilliantly. You jump onto it from a bridge, kill a few Covenant, and that's really all there is to it. Fighting Scarabs in Halo 3, on the other hand, is just as entertaining in the present as it was back when the game first released, thanks to how much more interactive its encounters with them are. There are a trio of Scarab battles during 3, and while the obvious choice for this video would be that at the end of the Covenant, during which you face two Scarabs, I've personally always been more enamoured with the Storm's rendition.
Stand by. Something big closing in on your location. Press down. It's getting closer. Oh, this can't be good, man. Scarab, find some cover now.
The sight of it clambering over buildings towards you before you begin zipping in between its legs while rockets fly every which way was the first time Halo 3 felt like a true next-gen game to me. Not only did the Scarab move around the battlefield in real time, you had to clamber onto it and clear it of enemies to be able to disable it, and it's no exaggeration to say my jaw was on the floor for the entirety of the set piece. Some may prefer the Covenant, and in fairness it does take the prize in terms of sheer spectacle, but when it comes to making an astonishing first impression, my vote goes to the Storm. There is perhaps a little less depth to this one than some of the other examples featured on my list, but the arrival of the Forward Unto Dawn a third of the way into Halo 3's The Ark is the dictionary definition of epic.
Look, up high. Here she comes. Is the Dawn rated for atmosphere? I guess we're gonna find out. Hey, take cover.
As a battle rages in the sky ahead of you, the enormous ship suddenly flies into view, the force of its arrival causing nearby debris from battles fought prior to be blown away in an instant. While Reconciled, an arrangement of the first part of Combat Evolved's Truth and Reconciliation suite, adds a real sense of grandeur to proceedings. You'll have laid eyes on the Forward Unto Dawn many times by this point in the trilogy, but seeing it up close and personal during gameplay is another matter entirely. It's an amazing event to witness that still gives me chills to this day. I've got a question for you. What's better than fighting the Flood? Fighting alongside them,
Do not shoot, but listen. Let me lead you safely to our foe. Only you can halt what he has set in motion.
In a twist I'm convinced no one saw coming, for the briefest of sections, your parasitic enemy becomes your parasitic pal as you charge forwards towards the Prophet of Truth as he attempts to activate the Halo array. You'll also no doubt be looking for revenge too, after he killed Miranda Keyes in the most cowardly fashion possible, shooting her in the back. And no revenge is sweeter than watching the Arbiter plunge an energy sword into him after he's already been infected by the Flood. I remember the first time I arrived at this section vividly, as I'd barely got my breath back after the excitement of fighting 2 Scarabs at once, and having another sequence as unforgettable as this one follow immediately after blew my mind. Prior to reaching this sequence, I think the Covenant had already cemented itself as the best Halo level full stop, and its ending is undoubtedly the cherry on the icing of the most delicious of cakes. You do, of course, also have to fight your way back through the Flood once truth has been dispatched once and for all, and that too makes events all the more enjoyable. You ally with the Gravemind and the Flood, you get exactly what you wanted, and then make a relatively clean getaway. You can't ask for much more than that. Poor old George, the Spartan who said he'd never leave Reach. He gives his life while a fair distance above the planet in space during Halo Reach's long night of Solace, believing that his actions would help turn the tide of humanity's battle against the Covenant.
Bad news is, time is fried. I'm gonna have to fire it manually.
That's a one-way trip.
We all make it sooner or later. Better get going, Six. They're gonna need you down there. Listen, Reach has been good to me. Time has come to return the favor. Don't deny me this.
To say his actions were in vain is something of an understatement given the size of the Covenant Armada which arrives mere seconds later, but that stomach-churning revelation is a huge part of why his death is so moving. Out of all the members of Noble Team, he is the one we get to know best during the first half of Reach's campaign. His imposing stature often juxtaposed against his kind-hearted demeanour. He truly cares about the planet of Reach and its inhabitants, and makes the ultimate sacrifice for them. George's death is an unexpected one, which marks the true beginning of Reach's downfall and a dramatic shift in tone, from occasionally triumphant to continuously crestfallen, and it's the first stark demonstration we're given that Noble Team is not a squad full of Master Chiefs, but rather is comprised of Spartans who are just as likely to meet their maker as anyone else in the series, super soldier or otherwise. Our time with George may have been brief, but his last few moments remain some of the most poignant Halo's ever seen. We can talk about George's death, or indeed the deaths of every other member of Noble Team until the cows come home, but I don't think any of them compare to that of Noble Six. Lone Wolf, Halo Reach's epilogue, is another experimental mission in a campaign packed full of them, and it is the most impactful of them all. As your current objective, labelled simply Survive, appears on screen, you're left to survey a desolate wasteland as the Covenant quickly closes in on your position. There is no chance of success, however. You can hold out for as long as you possibly can, but no matter what you do, you'll always be greeted by a cutscene of Noble Six battling to his last breath as he is eventually overwhelmed. Noble Six may have lived his life as a lone wolf, and on first inspection you might think his death to be the same given the circumstances, but in fact it's precisely the opposite. Six, like the rest of Noble Team previously, dies to help give humanity a fighting chance of victory over the Covenant. His sacrifice is one for the greater good. There are plenty of other occasions Reach manages to tug at the heartstrings, but none compared to this final flourish, especially when taking into account Halsey's monologue which follows straight after. Giving us a degree of agency during Noble Six's final moments was a masterstroke by Bungie, and a phenomenal way for them to end their time with the series. Some watching this might consider it blasphemy for there to be any moments from 343 Industries' time with the series on this list, but I continue to be blinded by the majesty of how well they handled Master Chief and Cortana's relationship during Halo 4.
But for all that, I'll never actually know if it looks real. If it feels real. Before this is all over, promise me you'll figure out which one of us is the machine.
This moment at the start of Shutdown is my favourite, however, realistically there are 3 or 4 others I could have chosen instead. The scenes between the pair at the end of Composer and Cortana's final goodbye. Well, final goodbye until 343 Industries undid all their good work during Halo 5. Could have also made the cut, but there's something about Cortana's words regarding which of them is the machine which really resonates. I love the visual contrast between the two during her monologue as well. While Cortana waxes lyrically about the nature of being alive, Master Chief awkwardly fiddles with his weapon, her words seemingly making the human perhaps closest to being a machine feel quite uncomfortable. 343 Industries may not have got a whole lot right during their time with the franchise, but Chief and Cortana's relationship in 4, I think they absolutely nailed. And with that, we reach the end of my list. Thanks for watching the video, boys, girls and Spartans. If you thought this video was also a 10, do consider liking, subscribing and sharing your greatest Halo moments, and fingers crossed we'll hang out again soon.